mute.
Hello, and welcome to Talk to Downtown. My name is Courtney Wood. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Downtown Stockton Alliance, the 501c6 nonprofit property-based business improvement district serving downtown Stockton. This series is intended to connect our business owners, property owners, visitors, and residents with the organizations, people, and resources which impact our community. Today, we have two special guests from the Filipino American National Historical Society Museum right here in downtown Stockton. We've got Erwin Mina, he is the board president, and we have Terri Torres. She is the board treasurer and the museum manager. So welcome. Thank you guys so much for being our guests today. We'll begin by having our guests share a little bit about themselves, their background, and how it led to them working for the Filipino American National Historical Society Museum. And then I will go ahead and ask them a list of questions I've outlined for them. And at the end, we will open it up for viewer questions. So if you do have a question, please type it in as a comment, and we will get to it towards the end of the live. So with that, welcome. Let's dive right into it. Please, can you guys both introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your background and how it led to you working with the museum?
Terri, why don't you go ahead first?
Okay, well, I'm Terri Torres, and I got involved with FANHS because my aunt had gone to one of the conferences of FANHS in San Francisco in 1994, and she decided that someone in Stockton should belong to the Stockton Chapter, which had formed in 1992. So my grandfather had come from the Philippines in 1913 and lived and worked and had businesses in California and in Stockton and in Little Manila. So she said that we need to preserve that history, and that's what FANHS was doing, and just, you know, be active and save all this history and be a part of it.
Awesome. All right. And Erwin.
Hi, I'm Erwin Mina. I was born and raised in Delano, California, right during the grape strikes, and I grew up with knew Cesar Chavez's sons. My dad was a Delano Manong, and he kind of followed the whole definition of what a Manong was. He was a Sakata. He came to Stockton, and he became a migrant worker, and in essence was part of this whole narrative that is starting to happen. And there's a new movement, and it's kind of related to the life and times of Larry Itliong. He would be synonymous of, say, Cesar Chavez for the Latino Americans, Martin Luther King for the African Americans. But for me, I do this just in honor of those who came before me, and how they scaffold us and gave us the opportunity, and to honor them was to tell their story, and this is one of the reasons why we want to have representation. Anyway, so that's why I'm doing it.
Thank you. Awesome. So you guys both have, personal ties to the cause. And can you tell everyone, in case they don't know, what is the vision and mission, of the FANHS?
Well, FANHS was started, the Filipino American National Historical Society, back in 1982 up in Seattle, Washington, with Fred and Dorothy Cordova. They were bridge generation children, and that's the bridge generation is children born in America by the end of 1945 to at least one Filipino parent who immigrated to the United States during the early 1900s. And they were afraid that the history of their parents and the early Manongs that came over were being forgotten and lost because it wasn't in the history books. So they started this organization to start collecting the history of these early people who contributed to the history of the United States. And now there are 43 chapters across the United States, and each chapter is collecting the history in their area, and the museum is a place to showcase that history.
Beautiful. So can you tell us a little bit about the Stockton chapter and how you guys came to start the FANHS Museum?
Okay. The Stockton chapter, like I said earlier, was started in 1992. It was chapter number 12. And because of the importance and the history of Filipinos in the Stockton area, it's one of the largest chapters now in the FANHS network. And because of Stockton's importance to Filipino American history, the trustees of FANHS in 1994 decided that if there was ever going to be a Filipino American History Museum, it should be built in Stockton. And so the Stockton chapter, since it was Stockton, the museum was embedded in Stockton. They worked on fundraising for 20 years to get enough money, and finally, thanks to the Downtown Stockton Alliance, in 2015, we had enough money to rent the Newberry building. And so that's how we started the museum there.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
So,
And what, oh yeah, go ahead, Erwin.
Courtney, I kind of wanted to let you know that yes, we are in Stockton, and we have very, very nice influences from the Stockton area. But we're making this West Coast and national outreach where we're trying to be a national museum. And our next step would be to meet with the folks over in Louisiana. A totally different story of Filipino American history. So
Very
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Having a broader reach. I love it. Yeah. That would be so wonderful for us in downtown Stockton, and for everyone from here to have this as like the place to learn. I love that idea. So what other services does the FANHS organization provide? You guys have the museum, and we're going to talk a lot about it. But are there any other services or activities that this organization does?
Well, yes, we do. In particular, and from my perspective, and excuse me, Terry, we have local universities and from places like UC Davis, San Jose State, Stanislaus. We have the local universities, UOP, and also Delta College here in Stockton. But what we're really proud about is we're able to tell the story, this Filipino American story and narrative to students, and we're making an outreach to reach students that are even younger than college bound students. For me, the experience has been that I didn't have ethnic studies until I got to college, and I think it's best for this society to have more education so we can have a more tolerant society.
Definitely. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit more about what makes the FANHS Museum such a unique spot? You talked about it's the only one of its kind. What else can you say about what makes it such a special place?
Well, we do have,
Terri,
we do have, like he said, we have student groups come in and to learn about the history of Filipinos in the United States. The museum covers all the waves of immigration starting from 1587 to the present. And we do presentations at different events and conferences across the United States. We do interviews and presentations where we can put that up on our YouTube channel. So the main purpose is to get this Filipino American history out to the public, because there's nobody else who's doing this. FANHS is a historical society, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. And no one else can tell the story of the Filipinos except those who lived it. And so that's the thing. We have to get the ones who are still alive to tell their story. So we've been interviewing, all the chapters have been doing that. In the Stockton chapter, they just finished making a video of eight, eight, eight different people who are now in their 90s telling their stories. And so that's the main thing, is to get that history out, preserve it, and so it doesn't get forgotten, gets into the history books, and people can learn it.
Okay, so a lot of outreach, outreach, just getting the word out. This is the experience, this is what we need to remember. These are the stories. I love it. So talking about the museum itself, can you tell us, what are some of the exhibits there? What's the experience that you hope that people have when they're walking through the museum? What's the goal of that?
So I think that Terri hit it right on the head. We have these exhibits that show our existence in North America ever since 1587, and then in New Orleans, and they were all Filipinos that came on Spanish galleons based on the ship Manifest. Now, the interesting and the most important thing is to tell the story and let the youth understand it. We just our real focus has been to try and connect the dots and tell the stories in a personal way, because you could have a history lesson and people start glazing over, but when you start telling stories about actual people and these Manongs, that they were young once, they loved music, and you ask students if they love music and do they like to dance, and they were just like us, and we want to make sure that this younger generation knows about what they did in order for us to have these freedoms that they take for granted. And we just want to make sure that that continues on. And that's one of the reasons why we have an outreach program. And we're trying to get to, grade school and younger to start telling this story, so that they get curious and they'll ask questions about who they really are. And what it'll do is it'll scaffold them to a point where once they get out into the world, they'll be better equipped to handle some of the adversities out there.
Awesome. Terri, is there anything you want to add to what Erwin was sharing?
Well, no, that's it. The main thing is we cover the whole history as much as we can, and we're always putting more and more, in the museum. Our space is small, but we try and keep it filled with as much as we can.
Interesting. And how do you decide what to add to that museum space? Like, how do you decide what to include in your exhibit?
We mainly, we started out with at least having a timeline of the history of Filipinos coming to the United States. So like you said, from the 1587, the 1763 in Louisiana, the immigration of them going to Hawaii and then to the United States and working. So we have a timeline. So there's a general history of timeline. And then we have a couple of things that are significant, like to California. We have the Campo scene, so that because mainly California was built in the agricultural business, it was built on the backs of Filipinos. And then you have the other big significant history is the World War II and the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry. And then we have other things that we rotate around, like the Alascaros. We have a new thing about Alaska and the Filipinos working in the Alaskan canneries. We have the new exhibit about Larry Itliong. So we go use themes, and we do have to rotate because our area is so small. If we had a bigger place, then we could keep things up all the time. And every year in October, which is Filipino American History Month, there's a nationwide theme that the FANHS chapters follow, and we build on whatever theme that is that year, and then we just keep rotating.
So these exhibits, Terri mentioned the military exhibit. These gentlemen, 250,000 or 260,000 people joined to fight in World War II in support of the United States. And so in 2017, they were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. And so that's a very, very significant thing, that we are part of American history. And then the other part was, she mentioned the Lariat Leong exhibit. That is a social justice exhibit, and it's created an activism that has a musical. It has parks that are being named, even streets being named after him. So Terri mentioned these exhibits. A lot of it has to do with the whole journey, the timeline, and the whole narrative of how the Filipino Americans have been in support of American history.
Beautiful. I love to hear how you guys have organized it as a timeline, you know, just really seeing the history piece by piece, and all of the different ways that Filipino Americans have been represented in our country. I love that. I'm curious, where did the display items and information, like, where does that all come from? Are they donated from private citizens? Do they come from organizations? You know, how do you guys do that research? Yeah,
all of that. It started, our collection started back in 1989. Every year, the Filipinos who were born and raised here, they had a big grand reunion. And in 1989, they were asked to bring photos of their lives. And the precursor to the Stockton chapter, they were called the Filipino American Historical Institute, or FAHI. They made copies of all of these photos that these people brought. And then when that group turned into FANHS, they said, well, hey, we've got all these photographs and everything. We can start doing something for a museum. And then when everybody started hearing about having a museum in Stockton, then they started donating things. Well, we've got these tools that left over from when we worked in the fields. Do you want these? Sure. We have these furniture that was built in the camps by the workers out of packing crates. Do you want those? Yeah. And we got our uniforms and dresses. So it was a lot of it's personal stuff. And then people like over in Hawaii, some lawyer was closing their office and said, got all these case records about Pablo Manlapit, who was head of a strike over there in Hawaii. Do you want these papers? Well, sure, we'll take it. And then we'll go through them and see what kind of an exhibit we can create out of it. We have an archives. The Seattle office has a big building, and they have an archives and in a file on almost every single Filipino you could think of. It's like you can go there, look up your name, and hey, they got a file about me. So we try and collect from whoever, and we do have to weed out some things, but right now we want to collect as much as we can, because we don't know if in the future, if we have a bigger building, how, there's so much more we could put on display. So we're saving it all.
Saving it all.
So Courtney, Terri mentioned this gentleman, Pablo Manlapit. He was probably the forefathers of the Filipino American labor movement in Hawaii. And you mentioned, where do you get these types of archives? And it mostly is from families, mostly from people, organizations. But in looking at the papers about Pablo Manlapit, there were a lot of records that were from the FBI. And yeah, so as I've been looking at researching, I noticed that there is a lot of things that the FBI had on people, especially labor leaders. So that was another source. So compliments of the FBI and maybe some independent photographers and personal archives. That's where we pretty much get a lot of these things.
How interesting. I bet it would just be so fun to go through all of those archives and to look at it all, you know. Do each of you have a favorite exhibit or display in the museum?
Well,
Go.
mine is kind of two things. Like I said, that we have a compost scene, the agricultural, how they lived in typical bunkhouse, and most of that furniture came from my grandfather's farm. He had a labor camp. And so my uncle saying, hey, we're going to throw this stuff out. You want it? Yes, we want it. And then on the other wall, where we have the timeline of the different types of jobs that Filipinos have done through the years, because sometimes people just equate Filipinos with agriculture, but they did other things also, the health field, hospitality, entertainment, and whatever. So my grandfather is in one picture of working on the railroads, and my mom and her sisters are in one pictures as nurses. And so I like, you know, that they are recorded now for history. So
I think we have that photo.
oh yeah.
There you go. Which
Yeah.
one is your your mother?
My mom's in the center. She's 97 now. And the other two aunts passed away a couple years ago. So, but
Wow,
yeah.
that is so cool. Where were they nurses?
My mom was here. She was the first Filipino to graduate from the San Joaquin County General Hospital nursing program, and then she later became in charge of it, and that transferred over to Delta College nursing program, and she was the director of the Health and Science Division until she retired in '86. The other two, one was in San Jose, and the other one was she also went through. She was a student of my mom's, the youngest one, and eventually she was over in Rochester, but then she came back. Yeah. So
Wow. So very very meaningful, you know, and historical even for our area. I love that. I love to hear it. Very cool. Okay. And Erwin, what are some of your favorites?
Well, I think Terri, first of all, I got to give it to you, Terri. You set this thing up. So a lot of it has a beginning, and it begins in 1587, and then it goes to Hawaii, and then it eventually arrives to Stockton, and this whole narrative of this whole generation. And there was this thing called anti-miscegenation law where they weren't allowed to marry Caucasians. So they were required to, well, you know, they were young men. They wanted to be. Hold on for a second. There's some music outside, but they wanted to be. You know, they wanted to live life. They were alive, and so with that, this whole modern generation. I grew up, as Terri mentioned, they lived in camps, and I grew up in a camp, so I knew the gentlemen that they were very eloquent, they were intelligent, they weren't just farm laborers, they had different levels of education. But in getting back to the exhibits, a lot of the things that Terri and the staff have put together pretty much exemplifies that generation, and their message was to give and to scaffold for the next generation so they could be successful, and that was the reason why they were there. And so a lot of this means a lot to me personally, because this camp scene, it looks just like when I grew up. And you look around and you look at all these faces, and they look like these men that you would call uncle, and they would treat you as if they were their own surrogate children because they didn't have a family. So a lot of that, you know, is very, very meaningful to me, and these exhibits, because just show and the powerful women that pretty much rule the Filipino household. So that would be my favorite exhibits. In other words, all of them look really good to me.
All of them. Loves them all. Wonderful. It's very cool to hear all these like personal ties to the stories and to the items here in the museum and to the photographs. So thank you for sharing. And I'm curious now if anyone thinks that, maybe their family has artifacts or photos that the museum could use. How can they get in touch with you to provide those items or pictures to you? What's the best way to do that?
Just call us or email us. And a lot of times, if they don't want to give up like photographs, we can scan them right then and there at the museum. But the main thing is whatever they do want to give us, we want them also to tell us the story behind it, so we could videotape them or something, so that their story goes along with whatever artifacts. We have gotten things from people that says, "Oh, well, we're just throwing this out," and they just dropped it off, and we have no idea who these people are or whatever. So, we want them to their stories to be told correctly. So we want them to tell us this in their own words. So, but yeah, just contact us. The easiest way is through the email address, because I check that all the time. The phone number, which is on the screen, you just leave a message and then I get a notification and then I'll call them back or email them. So.
Thank you. Yeah, so if there are any viewers who, if you feel like you have some family photographs or artifacts that might be of good use for the FANHS Museum, reach out. So my next question is, are there any new exhibits or like maybe new events happening at the museum that people should be excited about?
Well, go ahead, Erwin.
Okay, so there's one thing that the museum has been collaborating with. It's called Larry the Musical, which is in the Brava Theater in San Francisco, and it tells the story of this gentleman, this social justice icon, Larry Leong, who was just in 2022 was inducted in the California Hall of Fame, Labor Hall of Fame. And then what's also coming up is that in the museum we just recently did an exhibit with the Larry Leong. It's the only exhibit in the country. As Terri mentioned, we did the Lascaros, which is Filipinos who work in Alaska, exhibit. And then upcoming, we're have on deck, we have this music exhibit of Filipino Americans as well. And now in the last board meeting, we talked about having a mestizo, which is a mixed racial project, and telling an exhibit and a story, a talk story. How we're going to do it, we're not sure. And then in the future, in May, we have in Delano, California, the museum is putting on part of the musical music as well as exhibits in Delano, California, honoring Larry Leong, the Unity Park, where he unified ethnic groups of all races to gain our social justice. And then finally, but we have a well, not finally, but we have a national conference where we're going to exhibit and talk about the what it was like to live in the camps. Also, Larry the Musical, the making of, and then finally just the story of Larry Leong. And then in October, Filipino American History Month, we were just asked to be part of the 50th anniversary of the Agbayani Village, which was a byproduct of the 1965 strike, whereby the elderly Filipino men could live out the rest of their lives in dignity. And so we're having a 50th celebration in October. Terri, did I leave anything out?
No, we're always, we want to cover everything. So eventually, now, since we're a small volunteer group, we're all volunteer, nobody gets paid. So we're all trying to work on this as like extracurricular activity, because everybody has jobs and lives and whatever. So when we, it takes us, it takes manpower for a lot of this stuff. So, and a lot of hours. So it takes us a little bit time to get things together, but eventually we get it together. So.
Yeah, you guys are doing some wonderful work. Thank you for sharing all the stuff that you're doing, and things that people can expect in the future. For the October event, do you have a date yet? or is it still kind of being planned?
We actually have for the October events. There's Stockton ones. There's the Filipino American History Month that they do, and I think it's at the Delta College in October.
Yeah, that's
in
October 12th, I think, the annual, they call it FAMFest, Filipino American History Month, at Delta College, and it's free for everybody to come in, and so that's in the planning stages.
So
and
October 12th. Look out.
Whatever Saturday that.
You have a lot of the local talent, and last year it was very, very well done, and it's put on by the FANHS chapter, and in tandem with a lot of the local colleges like Delta College and a lot of the organizations, as well as the museum. So yeah, come on out. The October, we're looking at places like the Agbayani Village, and that celebration is going to be right after Filipino Weekend in Delano. So that's not local, but it's something that we're going to participate in and kind of represent the Stockton and Northern California representation.
Awesome. Awesome. So it sounds like if people haven't visited the museum in a while, there's probably some new things for them to check out. Can you remind everyone where the address is? Where's the museum located? What are the hours so that people want to stop by? How can they do that?
Well, we're at the 337 East Weber. It's in the old Newberry building downtown. Right now, because we're all volunteers, and since COVID, we've had to scale back because we lost a lot of our volunteers. So we're open by appointment only on Saturdays or Sundays. We do try to at least one weekend a month now to be open with no appointments necessary. So our next one is actually this weekend, April 13th and 14th. We're open from 11 to 4. And in May, it'll be the first weekend in May that we're open. So it's just that call us, request an appointment, give us a week or so or more so that we can round up our volunteers, because that's the main thing is we're real tight on volunteers and the hours that they're able to take away from their work or take away from their families and come in and help us.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear that you're ramping up, at least to have maybe just even one Saturday a month that's just open. That's so great, to give people that opportunity to just happen to stop by, wander in, see.
Yeah. And if you come on the
history,
you can there's a Filipino restaurant, Papa Herbs, just 2 doors down, and you can have some Filipino food.
There you go. There you go. Good recommendation. Okay, so I wanted to just ask a couple more questions about the museum. I wanted to know what is your vision for this museum in the next 1 or 2 years? Where do you hope to take it? What changes do you expect to see, or growth do you expect to see for the museum?
Well, we'd like to.
I'll take that one. I'll take that one. So I keep talking about this West Coast outreach and national outreach. What we'd like to do is, first of all, kind of get into more of a virtual space, and that way we don't have to worry about being open 24/7. It'll just be open, and what does that mean? It means that we probably should start looking into how we can reach not only in California or in Louisiana, but also globally. One of the things that I did in my career was global new product introduction in the technology segment. And so that would be my vision, and working to get a nicer brick and mortar facility, and then getting funding so we could have paid staff and having them take it to the next level. We're trying to meet with people that have virtual magazines. We're trying to meet with people that are elected officials that could help us with this whole narrative and getting the word out. Now, what does all this mean? It means that the sky's the limit, and that we could tell anybody at any time of the day about our struggles and the story the Filipino Americans have contributed to the United States history.
Beautiful. What a beautiful vision. I hope that you are able to reach it. That would be so cool to have a virtual kind of space for people to visit when they couldn't come in person. I love that concept. Okay, so I wanted to now just dive into a little bit more about the history, because you guys have been touching on it so much. And we've talked a lot about the museum. So hopefully anyone who has never visited is inspired now to come out. Can you tell us about kind of the Filipino American history of Stockton, as much as you can, in a short time frame, and compare it to just kind of the immigration of Filipinos to America overall? So, because I know we're not the only city that they were coming to, right? So can you tell us a little bit about the role Stockton plays in that overall story?
Okay. The earliest Filipinos that came over after the Spanish-American War, most of them, of course, were recruited by the Hawaiian Sugar Plantation Association. So a lot of them went to Hawaii first and then came over to the mainland. And they either came, if they're coming from that direction, they're either going to go to California or they went to Seattle. They could have gone also down to the San Diego area, and it all depended on what fields they were going to go into. There was a group of students that went over to the East Coast, the pensionados, and they were mainly to learn about basically how to run a democratic society and bring it back to the Philippines, But the majority came to California because they knew that there were jobs there. And they would land in San Francisco. In the early 1900s, they'd take a ferry up the river up to Stockton, because Stockton had the inland port. Later on, they took taxis. There were people down there waiting. Oh, you're going to Stockton? We're going to Stockton, and they'd have a group come on in taxis. And Stockton the majority came to Stockton because it was the largest city at that time in this area. The others hadn't grown too big yet. But because they were all in this area, then you had Lathrop building up and French Camp building up and Ileton building up. And they would stay there. A lot of the Filipinos later would be coming because they either were in the Navy or in the military. And then like during the 1965, you had what they called the brain drain, and that was bringing over professionals, the educators, the nurses, the doctors, the engineers, and Filipinos could come freely until basically till 1933. There was no restrictions on how many they could come because they were nationals of the United States. So that's why so many were over here, because they heard the streets were paved with gold, and they felt this was the place the United States was. They could come, make money, send money back home, or return back home as a successful Filipino. But a lot of them stayed here. Now the biggest cities in California, Daly City is one of the bigger cities now of Filipinos families. Of course, San Diego and even Vallejo area is still really big because of the Navy. And of course, over on the East Coast, it's the Navy over Virginia Beach. Seattle was built up because it's close to the canneries. And so they could go to the Alaskan canneries during the off season of working in the fields. The Filipinos contributed to United States history in so many different ways. And so that's why it has to be told, because you don't see it in the history books. Only lately ethnic studies is finally touching on the subject, so.
Yeah, it's so important. Thank you for explaining that kind of, what was the draw for Stockton? And it was the jobs. There were jobs here, ways to make money. I wanted to ask, yeah, so kind of with what Erwin has brought up a few times during the interview so far, I wanted to ask, how has the presence of Filipino Americans in San Joaquin County helped to shape our society, like in terms of labor rights and other things? How have you seen that happen?
Okay, I kind of wanted to elaborate a little bit about the why the Filipinos are here as well.
Yeah.
Spanish-American War, spoils of war was the United States took over the Philippines, and we became subjects of the Philippines, of the United States. Now, that was in a time in the United States where they were excluding all Asians, Japanese, Chinese, the Koreans.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Filipinos kind of filled the void of labor, skilled labor in agriculture. So that kind of explains why we were able to come and while the nation was excluding all other Asians. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Terry mentioned that they came in many ports. They came in into San Francisco. They came into Seattle. They came in probably Long Beach as well, originally from the West Coast perspective. And they all came to Stockton because Stockton was one of the highest Filipino populace in the United States at the time. And they didn't have TikTok and they didn't have Instagram and things like that. So they had to go by snail mail letters, and that's where they would meet people, their cousins and folks like that. On El Dorado Street, there'd be little areas where there were certain dialects that were there, and that they would know that they'd seen their cousins, and that was their network. Now, a lot of times when you talk about history of the Filipino Americans is that they had a lot of struggles in regards to living conditions and also pay. Now,
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons that we honor this gentleman, Larry Itliong, is because the growers would always pit all ethnic groups against each other. When one would go on strike, the other would be paid a few cents, and they would scab and then break strikes. So one of the reasons why we honor this gentleman is he came in 1929 and almost immediately started organizing Filipinos because they were being mistreated so much that and fast forward, he unified with the Mexicans, with the Arabs, with the African Americans to have collective bargaining, and then it came to all a boil right in 1965 in Delano. And why was that so important? Well, if you look around, there was the Vietnam War, there was civil rights with the African Americans, there was indigenous people, there was women's rights, gay rights. The country was ripe for social justice, and the Filipinos played a huge part in this because they went on strike in 1965, a full week before the Cesar Chavez's group joined them. So that this whole story has not been told, but within this new activisms that I mentioned with the Larry the Musical and a lot of the ethnic studies, it's being told now, and it's accepted with the Chavez family as well. I mean, they acknowledge the contributions of Filipino Americans to this whole social justice movement.
Thank you. Thanks for diving in. And what a beautiful story, kind of uniting all of these groups together so that they can all get paid more, and instead of having those groups pitted against each other. What a wonderful story of kind of uniting. So thank you for sharing that. And now talking more about the history in Stockton. Can you tell us about some of the most important Filipino American cultural sites in downtown? Can you share anything about that?
Terri?
Well, okay. Well, as far as sites go, of course, they're gone because of the crosstown freeway. What's still left, because there were a lot of Filipino organizations, and there still are. Couple of the main ones was the Legionarios del Trabajo, and their office, clubhouse. Oh, they had different clubhouses. One was the Daguhoy Lodge, which was on Sonora Street. That finally they got sold. The building is still there, but somebody else is running it. But the main lodge group is still they were on South San Joaquin Street, where now Little Manila Rising is at. The LTD have their new building up on Highway 99 and around 8 Mile Road. It used to be a church, and so now the LDT has that as their new space. It's a lot bigger and newer. Of course, on South San Joaquin Street, you have the Little Manila Rising building, which was the LDT. Across the street is the Filipino Federation, which has been around since the early 1920s. So that's still there. There's the Iloilo Circle, which is on, I can't remember, I gotta look it up. That's still standing there, and the group is still doing things, but mainly out of San Francisco. But the Iloilo Circle is because the sister city of Stockton is Iloilo over in the Philippines. And let's see. Yeah, that's on Sonora Street. Oh, the Daguhoy Lodge was on Hunter Street. But anyway, there's not much left. But it's hard to, I mean, as far as cultural landmarks and such, they're not actually can be called, the buildings can't be called landmarks. The districts can be. That's why the Little Manila district is a historic district, and not, the buildings aren't designated as landmark buildings. Only the districts are, because, you know, what does a Filipino building look like? Or what does a Filipino American building look like? You know, it's easier for the other cultures to have styles for their buildings, but there's a lot of areas, and we do the tours, the Little Manila Rising, and coordinate with them to do the Little Manila tour. In fact, there's one happening on Friday, so they can see where things used to be.
So Courtney,
Interesting. Yeah.
The significance in these buildings that Terri is saying is that in a time when it wasn't real safe to be a Filipino in this country, these organizations and these places were a safe place. Terri mentioned the Filipino Federation building. In 1930, that building, well, not that particular building, but that building for the Filipino Federation was bombed. And anyway, so a lot of these places that Terri is mentioning were safe places. This Little Manila, I think it was a 4x4 block area, was kind of a safe place, not only for Filipinos, but also the Japanese and Chinese. So there was a whole ethnicity, and of course Latinos lived there too. But what Terri is describing is just that. It was a community, a place where people would feel safe and find camaraderie and family.
Wow. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about Little Manila. And I know that the installation of the Highway 4 destroyed a lot of that community. And back in 2003, Little Manila was listed as like one of the most endangered historic sites. Have you seen anything change from 2003 to now? You were saying there's only a couple of buildings there. What else? What other work has been done to kind of help try to preserve at least the memory of Little Manila?
The main thing between FANHS and Little Manila Rising and a couple of other groups, the main thing is to keep the stories alive. And like I said, we started doing tours there, and the one of our members, the late Dr. Dawn Mabalin, she was a trustee of FANHS, and she's the one that started the Little Manila Foundation with Dylan Delvo. And she would bring students, her students in every spring to tour the area so that they could learn about what was here before. And we've got pictures and things that people can relate to. And so the main thing is you're not going to be able to, you can't resurrect buildings that don't exist anymore, but you can tell the stories of what was there. And this, just so it doesn't be forgotten, because the people growing up now, they don't know what Little Manila is because it's nothing's there. It doesn't exist, you know? So when they see the signs, Little Manila District, Historic District, like, what does that mean? You know? So that's the main thing, is to tell those stories, do the tours, and, just so nothing gets forgotten.
Beautiful. So with that, if anyone's interested in those tours, how can they sign up to kind of participate or join one? You said there's one happening Friday, is that right?
Yeah, the Little Manila Rising, Irene Kalimlim, she handles the tours, basically, because it's they have the crew to do it, but they just go online basically, and
Okay.
littlemanila.org is for Little Manila Rising. And it's eventually one of the things, like Erwin was talking about, having a virtual tour set up. Because right now, San Jose, they do a Pinoy Town tour. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
also virtual on the internet. So this is something we would like to do too. But again, that all takes coordination, takes funding, it takes, all this stuff. So, but this is, things that we can work towards. But yeah, Little Manila Rising. And, so I think Erwin might be having problems.
Thank you, Terri. Yes, Erwin, we see you. Can you hear us? Okay, not yet. Let's see if maybe he can get his sound going. Erwin, can you hear us okay?
Well,
okay. Well, while he's getting that together, let's keep talking. So, if you can you share a little bit about Little Manila at its height? What were some of the businesses there? Who was living there? What kinds of residents were there? Erwin, can you hear us? Okay, he's working on it. Go ahead.
Well, of course, the Little Manila area was really considered like Chinatown, basically. Nobody really called it Little Manila until later. Mostly people in the early, it was going down to Chinatown, basically, because that's where most of course, all the Chinese food restaurants were there. They had barbershops, the hotels, pool halls, social clubs. And then after 1941, then a lot of the businesses were vacated because they were Japanese owned, and the Filipinos then filled the spaces. This was a place where the unwhite community could go and be safe. And I'm sitting in a room where the lights go off automatically if you don't move around. So,
Makes sense.
but anyway, so anyway, yeah, this is so the Filipinos knew that this is where to come. If they mostly lived out in the camps, but on the weekends they would come into the pool halls, to the social clubs. They would come in and eat food, and there was a lot of grocery stores there that catered to the camps. So that's why there were so many grocery stores on El Dorado Street. My grandfather had 2 grocery stores, and because one would go to one camp and one would go to the other camp. And plus the camps were made of either you had Visayans in one camp and you maybe had Ilocanos in another camp. So different grocery stores would cater to the Visayans, different grocery stores would cater to the Ilocanos, different barber shops would be for one group, for the other group. So that's why there were so many different barber shops and everything. But it was thriving community. And there were families that lived in some of the houses there, because mostly it's all businesses, but there were housing there also. And so there were families there, and they would, we've got one of our members, Beverly in Cabo. She grew up in the Mariposa Hotel. Down below was her family's grocery store, and they lived in the back. And so she would be playing up and down El Dorado, Lafayette Street as a little girl, and always felt safe. So it was a community where, you know, everybody knew everybody, and it was nice.
Thank you for painting such a beautiful picture, you know, a clear picture. So I think anything that we can do as a community to help preserve that memory, you know, going on these tours, let's do it, because it's just wonderful memory to preserve. So I wanted to ask now, if there was just one takeaway that you both would like to share with viewers about Filipino American history, either in Stockton or just in the US, if there's one takeaway that you want people to have from this interview, what would you like it to be? Yeah.
Well, the main thing is, as far as Filipino American history, the only way you're going to learn that history is by asking the people who lived it, so that it gets told correctly. And if those people aren't around, then yeah, there's a lot of research you're going to have to do. But you know, we lost a lot of opportunities of asking these people these questions, because also nobody thought it was important. And then you started realizing, well, wait a minute, well, they were in the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry. They, you know, they were in the Bataan Death March. We got to know, how do they feel? What was their story about that? Who's left to tell that story? Or, you know, the St. Louis 1904 World's Fair, Filipinos were put on display like zoo animals. You know, and they were, different tribes were brought over and put on display for the United States to see their new little brown brothers. Well, they didn't call them that until after World War II, but to come over and see, what does the Filipino people look like? And they pitted these groups against each other, because they weren't used to, you know, being with all the other tribes and stuff, because Philippines are so far spread out, you know, over 7,000 islands. Somebody from one island may have never even seen someone from another island. So so these are stories that are not being taught, not being told. And this, you know, no one else is doing this. That's what FANHS was started for Filipino American history. There's other Philippine cultural groups that are telling the history and the roots of the Philippines. And that's good, because we have to know where they came from. And if our facility ever got any bigger, we could have these different sections in there. So fingers crossed.
Thank you for sharing that message. Erwin, can you hear us? Oh, okay. So he's still having trouble with talking. Okay. I'm sorry, Erwin. Okay. He agrees. He agrees with Terri. Awesome. Okay. So another question I have is, what's the most common question that you get asked about the FANHS Museum or about Filipino American history?
Well, a lot of it is some of it is how can we do research on our families, and even though we're a historical society, the best place to go to find research is, of course, to like ancestry.com, if you're or the city, if you're looking for land records and birth records and things like that. You could go down to City Hall and go get records and land records, because we only have information of what people have given us and whether or not we've done any further research on it. So a lot of people ask us, how do I find out when my father or grandfather came to the United States? Well, you either go to the online, or you go to the easiest places, go to your local family history center with the Church of Latter-day Saints, because anybody can go in there and look up records, or go to the library. You can go and ancestry.com is free at the local libraries. But if they do find something, then we'd like to, record that history and showcase it eventually, because this is what the thing is. Our ultimate dream would be to be like the Holocaust Museum, where somebody can come in, sit down at a computer, type in their father's name or whoever, and all this information would pop up. Well, that takes time and money to do that. But that would be, the ultimate dream. So everybody can look things up. Easy.
That would be amazing to have a huge database like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
we have a little bit, but not,
not on every person.
No.
That would be too difficult to track. So in your experience, how have you seen your work at the FANHS Museum have an impact on our community? Is there any story that you'd like to share?
Well, one like when he talked about the student groups coming in, that a lot of them don't realize the connection of the Philippines to the United States. A lot of them, when they learn about how, a lot of them don't even learn about how the United States got possession of the Philippines. In the history books, the blurbs, like around third, fourth grade, sure, there's a Spanish-American War, and you got the United States got Guam, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Cuba got their freedom. And that's about all you hear. So then when they start learning about the different things, like someone has mentioned the yo-yo, the Filipinos demonstrated when Duncan Yo-Yo hired all these demonstrators, Filipinos, because they had learned how to do the tricks with the yo-yo. And there was a group of at least a dozen of them that traveled the United States in the 50s and 60s, maybe the 40s, demonstrating how to use a yo-yo, how to play with it. And then later on, even a Filipino man, and I can't remember his name, but he had his own company of the yo-yos. So they didn't invent the yo-yos. They just taught people how to use and play with them better. They did things with the strings and stuff so that they became more easier to do tricks. But, they come in, they see this picture of a guy playing with the yo-yo on our wall, and they wondered, oh, what does the Filipinos have to do with yo-yos? So then we can tell them those stories. So it's teaching educating these younger ones who have no idea of how the Philippines fits with United States history. So, if we get enjoyment out of that, then at least we're educating and continuing the legacy out there.
Beautiful.
You hear me, Courtney?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Oh.
Erwin, you're back. Welcome
Yeah.
back. Okay. Hi. So Terri was just sharing what impact she feels that the museum has on our community. She was sharing the story about telling people about how Filipino Americans had been learning the tricks, yo-yo tricks, and sometimes when people come to the museum, they're wondering why there's, a picture of someone with a yo-yo. And so she explains the reason why and what it has to do with Filipino American history. So I would love to hear your answer as well to the question, which is, how do you feel that the work that you've been doing, the work of the FANHS Museum, has had an impact on our community?
Well, first of all, I like to tell the story about this whole generation that did things for us. Even out there in the gentlemen, they were inventors. I knew of a gentleman who created a crop duster device that, in modern terms, that it would be
Breaking.
They also were
Oh,
part.
Erwin, could you try talking a little closer to the phone just a little bit? Let's see if we can get sound. Yeah, you were talking about the engineers in the working camps. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there were like a lot of people that were like inventors, and they just out of necessity they would create things that were in modern day would be considered to be a mechanical engineering feat. For example, being able to do fertilizer dispersion, and they would do things like create things that would hook onto a Jeep and put fertilizer down and just make things very, very easy for the farmers. The museum kind of accentuates the fact that these gentlemen were living individuals that kind of impacted all of us and were inspirational for all of us. And I think that from a museum perspective, that would be something that it gives us the ability to tell these stories and maybe inspire at least if we inspire one person, one young youth, that's we've done our job here.
Awesome. I love it. You guys both are all about, educating the youth. Let them know all these beautiful historical stories. So we love having the FANHS Museum in downtown. We love having you guys here. We're happy to have you. And I wanted to now ask, what do you think makes downtown Stockton specifically a good place for the museum? Why do you like that the museum is located downtown?
Well, the main thing is because that's where the history is of Filipino Americans. That's why we always wanted our building to be downtown. And so we were lucky enough at least to get the space that we did over at Newberry. But it's important that people, the downtown area does need to be revitalized. So if more businesses can come down there, and if the place can be cleaned up a bit, that's where we'd like to be. So
definitely.
Yeah. And one of the reasons that that I think this museum is in a great spot is I agree with Terri that perhaps the inner city can have another phase and of development and a little bit of a cleanup, urban renewal type thing. But one of the things that I think about this museum is, you have this downtown, this little town called Little Manila, and then this crosstown freeway that just basically erased it. And that was something that went around just about every city in the United States. You had the I Hotel over in San Francisco. You had in Delano, you had the Glenwood Filipino town just wiped off the map just because they thought it was undesirable. But I guess my point is that with the downtown crosstown freeway, there was this kind of a racist practice of redlining, where even if people of color could qualify to buy properties, they weren't allowed because institutionally they would get really bad terms, and so therefore they couldn't afford it. I guess the reality was that Filipino Americans weren't allowed north of Main Street, and this museum is north of Main Street, so it's kind of got a little sense of we're still here kind of thing.
Very interesting. Yeah, I love to hear that. It's downtown is a good place due to the history that relates to the museum, 100%. And we're working on the revitalization, and we have our DSA clean team. But yeah, we really love having you guys here. So thank you for that. And you already gave a shout out to one of our downtown restaurants. So if anyone is coming down to visit the museum, are there any other restaurants that you think they should stop in?
I like Tio Pepe's myself. It's
there you go. Love it.
Yeah, there's a lot of nice places. Yeah, there's a lot of nice places. I'm not able to go downtown as often as I would like, because I take care of my mom. But when I'm down there working, I of course Papa Herbs, and then I'll go to Starbucks too to get my coffee, or the other one that's around there. So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of good little eateries to stop in if you're, swinging by the FANHS Museum. Have lunch after. Okay, so people who are listening to the interview, they might be inspired to kind of help you to support your mission. Do you have any job openings or volunteer opportunities available at your organization? You just said everything's volunteer, so I'm guessing no paid positions.
Right.
But how can people volunteer, or could they donate? What are the ways that people can get involved?
Sure. They can, yes, we do love volunteers, and all they have to do is either call or email us, and you can come down and see what we need or what you feel comfortable doing. And then, of course, donations. We're always taking donations. That's how we live. Or we do have museum memberships, and all of that is also the how to donate and stuff is on our webpage at the FANHSmuseum.com under memberships and donations. And then, volunteers is what we need, because we would love to be open more. The thing about being open only on the weekends is because of the parking downtown and the area where we're at. There's not a lot of parking during the weekday because of the schools and the businesses down there. So that's why we stick to the weekends right now. If we ever do find another place down there with parking, that would be great. So, but yeah, just contact us. Email is easy. The FANHSmuseum@AOL.com. I check that several times a day. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Courtney?
Oh, go ahead, Erwin. Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of under the same theme as what Terri is saying is, we're all volunteers. However, whatever whenever you volunteer, there's a huge element of self-satisfaction and history that you'll get, and there's also perhaps a little bit of identity. So one day when you're out there in this tough world, that you'll be able to kind of be better equipped to handle things. And anyway, some of these histories will help you with that. And again, it's about self-satisfaction and maybe history of yourself. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing how people can get in touch if they are interested in volunteering. It sounds like you guys do need some help. So anyone listening, reach out to them. And so that was pretty much, we're coming to the end of my questions. Is there anything else that people can do to support the work that you are doing? And how can people get in touch with you if they've got further questions?
Yeah, just by the email or the phone. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of volunteer stuff that can be done. I mean, there's things, being a docent, but then there's also behind the scenes stuff for like social media, websites, graphic designers, different things like that. So if you have an expertise, and you're willing to donate your time, contact us.
Yeah, and also, Terri mentioned your artistic ability. We're reaching out, and we go to these events. We'd like to have it kind of, recorded. And if people who are good at film and editing would like to join us, that would be great too. It would be a really nice thing to be able to say that you were part of this whole social movement.
Beautiful. Definitely agree. So if anyone is watching, they've got those skills, get in touch with Terri and Erwin. Okay. Well, thank you both for answering all my questions. I know there were a lot of them. So let's go ahead and move into the audience questions. So if you guys have been watching and you typed in a question, we're going to start getting to those now. And if you haven't and you want to, now's your chance. So are you guys ready? Ready for audience questions?
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. Let's see what we've got. All right. This question... Okay, so Johnny Palacios has a question from YouTube. He says, if in fact you were to become a national museum, what changes would be made to the Stockton location? So I know you talked already about, it already is kind of telling the history. Are there any kind of other changes you would be wanting to make to get more national recognition than you already do?
Well, the main thing we're already a national history museum because we're the only ones that tell the history all across the nation. But in order to tell more of that history, we need more space. And, so the only thing that would change, I think, well, it would be, the size of the place and the personnel to staff it,
Gotcha. Okay, so a little expansion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think that in order for us to achieve that is like Terri said, we have to have more people. But I think the outreach needs to be more comprehensive, and we have to get more stories out there, just to bring up the awareness that yes, we are a national museum. And we just started pretty much going out and meeting with people. And throughout the years, people have done it as well. But we're going to try and do a second follow-up as well. So,
and the main thing is, like I said, for FANHS, we have 43 chapters across the United States. So they're all working nationally to collecting that history in their areas. And like I said, the museum is a place to showcase that. So little by little, we're getting things in from across the United States. It's just having the space to show it all.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think not a lot of people realize that the FANHS Museum is a national museum. So I think, it's great that we're doing this interview, and the more we can get the word out, the better. I love that. Okay, so here's another question. This is from Damon Alums on LinkedIn. Question is, do you have ties to the sister cities in the Philippines? So you talked a little bit about it. Do you want to add a little more?
Well, as far as the actual ties to the cities, like I said, since we're a historical society, but we do have members that work at our museum who are also belong to the Sister City Association in Stockton. And so whenever they come to town, like from Iloilo, if they come to town, then they bring them over to the museum. But that's basically, it's just that the same people that work with us work with the Sister City Association. So if there's any events or anything going on that we can cross, pollinate, then we do.
Perfect. Anything that you want to add, Erwin?
No, it's exactly that. I mean, when we periodically go out and we talk with sister cities, whether it be the Ilocano, which is a dialect, when I say Ilocano, or whether it be Visayan, which is another dialect that is in the south of the Philippines. So we kind of have sister cities in both in most regions in the Philippines. Again, it's not done yet, but we're still trying.
Okay, a little bit of collaboration there. Awesome. Okay, so I think this is another question from Damon Alums on LinkedIn. The question is, do you have a feature or connection to the pre-colonial history of the islands? That's an interesting question.
We don't have we don't basically have any exhibits regarding that. We do have it in our research that people have written about and collected, and so we have reference books and things. Because basically, since we're Filipino American history, we're covering the stuff that happened after the Spanish American War. But anything that was before Spain got involved, that's just like in the reference material. We don't have anything exhibit wise. But there are other scholars and other organizations that speak to that part of it, especially in the Philippines. So
interesting. Yeah. So the museum is more like 1587, I believe, is the year that you're saying.
Well, 1587 is when the first recorded, a recorded landing that was found. I'm sure there's probably other ship records or whatever before or after, but the one that was found was in 1587 that talked about them landing off the shore of California. So at least we have a recorded something in writing that says they were here in 1587. Then there was, a few other ship records after that, but that's all during the Spanish rule. So they were still a colony during Spanish rule. So before that, I don't,
Yeah, not necessarily in the scope of the museum.
Right. That's somebody else's area.
There you go. Thank you, Damon, for your question. Interesting question. Okay, this question is from Sean Chat. Okay, so you guys covered it, but let's do it in case anyone missed it. So the question he has is, love the museum. Are there any plans to increase the amount of hours the museum is open? In addition, are there any plans to make the museum not appointment-based? You said yes, but let's remind everyone just in case.
Yeah, as soon as we get more volunteers and people who are willing to be there, then, of course, we'll be open more. But right now, by appointments, because there's only a handful of us who can come in at certain times. And like I said, we all have to see who doesn't have work going on, the regular paid work going on, versus volunteering here. And everybody's got family matters also. And the, FANHS is like I said, an extracurricular activity. This is what we do in our off time. And we do it because we love being there. So as we can get more of those people, then we can be open more. So
volunteer and it might help.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Okay, so this one's from Mike Huber from YouTube. He says, okay, both my wife's grandfather, Ray Lapitan, was the world yo-yo champion and is featured in a book. We have been to the museum several times. Okay, so he's asking what days and times the museum is open. We did answer that, but how about we ask this, because we didn't cover this. How much is the admission to the museum?
Well, right now we're accepting donations. So however you feel that your experience has been worth it to you, we ask that you donate. And if you're a member of the museum, then it's free admission. And all of that's on the website too, of how you can become a member. But right now it's by donation only, because of our status of not being able to be open. We just accept whatever you can fill. $1 is fine, more is better.
Very affordable. So affordable museum by donation.
Yeah.
And as the days and times go, as you guys have mentioned a few times now, by appointment. So reach out.
By appointment, and we try, Saturdays and Sundays are easy for the easier to find parking down there, and also from 11 to 4. That way, like I said, I can see who's available and schedule them to come down.
All right. Thank you, Mike, for sharing and asking the question. Okay, so let's see if there's any other questions coming in. Okay. All right, so at this time, I don't see any additional questions. So is there anything that the two of you would like to share with viewers before we close out?
There was one question someone had asked whether or not we're going to be doing anything with the Ube Fest.
Oh, okay, yes.
And we'll just have an information table there with the chapter, the Stockton chapter. So just information and how you can come and see us.
Just to visit the FANHS Museum.
Yeah, because that's happening at the same time. Some other activities are going on also. May and October are busy months. So, and like I said, since there's only a few of us, we have to, pick and choose what we can
what you're going to be at.
Yeah.
Yeah, Courtney, that Ube Fest is on May 11th, and it's where the Lariat Leong Unity Park, and there's right now they have about 1,000 people already all geared up to go. So we do have to pick and choose, but our message would be, come on out to the museum, and if that once a month opening doesn't work, Terri and I are willing to be flexible to keep it open for you, and come on out.
Yeah, definitely come out and visit. And Terri, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, just that. Just if you can come and visit, that'd be great. We do try and do a presentation of some kind during the month. It's usually the third Sunday of the month. So if you've got something that you'd like to present to the community about Filipino American history, either telling your story or doing a demonstration, or something that has pertaining to that, contact us and we can set something up. On the 21st, April 21st, we have Tiffany Barry coming in from San Jose area, and she wrote a book and teaches Filipino folk songs to children.
Oh, cool.
And so she's going to come in and do a presentation. And it's always a free event. We'll take donations. And so that's 1:30 on the 21st on Sunday. So, but if you've got something you want to tell, story or something you want to show, we've been trying to work on getting the yo-yo people involved. We've got a couple of people in Stockton that are involved with the Filipinos showing the yo-yos. And so we've been trying to get something together on that. So yeah, anything, just contact us.
Just reach out.
Yep.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you so much.
Too.
Oh, say it again. Oh, go ahead, Terri. Were you saying artwork?
No, it's just like we've had, like we had the comic book artist Tony DeZuniga's artwork shown in the museum also. So if you've got a exhibition that's ready to go that has to do about Filipino American history, contact us. We had a photographer that had his Mexipino photographs already ready mounted or ready to go. Anything that's less work for us to do, that's good too. So yeah, contact us.
Display is ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Terri and Erwin, for your time. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. I hope you guys learned a lot. This video, it has been streaming live to YouTube and LinkedIn, where we are at Downtown Stockton. It has also been streaming live to X, where we are at Downtown STKN. And to conclude, I just want to say, you guys do such amazing work. This museum is such a beautiful gem, and I think a lot of people don't know about it. So really, really encourage anyone who has not been to the FANHS Museum here in downtown Stockton, come check it out. It's beautiful, the work that you guys are doing for history, cultural preservation, just everything. So appreciate both of you, and thank you so much for your time. So thanks Terri and Erwin, and thanks viewers for tuning in.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Of
Thank
course,
you.
of course. Thank you. All right. And with that, I'll just say, have a great day downtown.
Okay.